the Houthis made a serious strategic mistake when they opened fire on a U.S. Navy Seahawk helicopter over the Fiery Sea. What followed was a swift, decisive, and devastating response, the beginning of a battle they will never forget. At 6:30 a.m. local time, 2 U.S. Navy MH-60R Seahawk helicopters, launched from the aircraft carrier USS Eisenhower and the destroyer USS Gravely, were providing close air support for a combined naval task force as they patrolled the troubled waters of the southern Red Sea. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next video. The sky was still. The sea only rippled slightly, a rare peace amid the fragile border of war. But in that seemingly peaceful moment, fate began to move. In just a few seconds, this sea would explode. Unbeknownst to them, the Seahawk pilots were in the crosshairs of a Houthi fast attack craft formation operating near Hodeidah. They locked onto the Singapore-flagged cargo ship Maersk Hangzhou, a high-value asset being escorted, and suddenly opened fire with a barrage of guided missiles and machine gun fire as the ship passed through the southern Red Sea, about 55 nautical miles southwest of Al-Hudaydah, Yemen. The Houthis' plan was audacious. Close in on the cargo ship, in a swarm formation, take control of it in the blink of an eye, and seize control before the crew could send a distress signal. But there was a problem. 2 U.S. Navy MH-60R Seahawk helicopters were already in the air and closing in at high speed. Deployed from the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower and USS Gravely, the 2 helicopters were codenamed Lancer 71 and Lancer 72. If you like this situation, comment number 1. If you don't like, comment number 0. Their mission is to monitor maritime security and verify any suspicious surface targets. Sound simple? But in reality, they encountered a large-scale hijacking attack on a U.S.-escorted commercial vessel. Maersk Hangzhou immediately requested assistance as soon as the small vessels came into sight. The ship had a private security team from Trident Group on board, and as soon as the Houthi vessels came within 6 nautical miles, they quickly took up combat positions. However, they were only equipped with M4 rifles and an M240 machine gun, completely incomparable to the firepower of the Houthi side. On the attack boats, the Houthi forces carried missiles, thermobaric RPGs, and PKM machine guns with extended magazines, all of which have far greater range and destructive power than commercial vessels possess. In a few minutes, small boats will approach and attempt to board the ship. 2 Seahawk helicopters immediately responded to the distress signal. As soon as the order was given, the two increased speed to 160 knots to close the 26 nautical mile gap between them and the ship. But time was not on their side. At that rate, they would arrive in 9 minutes, about 5 minutes behind the ideal time to stop the Houthis. The pilots were forced to quickly devise a preemptive strike plan before the enemy could board the ship. At 6:31 a.m., the helicopter's radar detected 4 Iranian-supplied Boghammer-type fast attack craft. Each 7 to 10 meters long, they were approaching the Maersk Hangzhou at 50 knots in an extremely tight converging formation. Each Boghammer boat had 3 to 4 Houthi gunmen, armed with PKMs, RPGs, and AK-47s. Two of the ships carried Taba 14 RPGs with thermobaric warheads, capable of penetrating up to 300 millimeters of armor. While the hull of the Maersk Hangzhou was only about 25 millimeters thick, clearly completely unable to withstand this destructive force. Thanks to Starlink, they can coordinate swarm tactics, receiving live images from drones, coastal reconnaissance, and command posts. This was not just a single raid, but a coordinated attack in line with Iran's asymmetric naval doctrine. Despite lacking heavy weapons, Maersk Hangzhou was not completely defenseless. As the Houthi vessels closed within 1,800 meters, the security team opened fire from reinforced positions with M240B machine guns positioned on the stern and port sides of the vessels. They hit one, but the other 3 vessels continued to approach. Within 47 seconds, the attacking ships had closed the distance to 600 meters, right into the effective range of the RPGs, and the decisive shot was fired. Despite being heavily suppressed, the RPG gunner on ship number 2 still managed to fire a shot that flew close to the ship's superstructure, less than 3 meters from the control center. If it hit here, Maersk Hangzhou would lose all control and would have no way to fight back. At this point, things were almost out of control for the security team. And that's when the Seahawks arrived. Thanks to the resilience of the security team, the Houthi ships were held back at a distance of 600 meters, enough for Lancer 71 and 72 to close the gap. With the order to fire approved, they needed to quickly identify their first target. Mounted under the nose of each helicopter was an AN/APS-153V radar. Although the radar detected all 4 ships from a distance of 42 kilometers, due to the turbulence from the waves, more data was needed to accurately determine speed and direction of movement. At that time, the radar was processing up to 32 different signals at the same time. The pilots then switched the radar to narrow pulse mode, emitting short pulses of 0.5 to 1 microsecond duration to collect high-resolution data. This mode helps to accurately locate the approach direction, but to lock onto the target, they must activate the MTI, Moving Target Indicator function. MTI exploits the Doppler effect to detect moving objects, like the sound of a motorbike passing by. Once the target is identified as real, the system continues to use the ISAR, Inverse Synthetic Aperture Radar, to build a detailed image. With the image clear and the target locked on, the moment to fire finally arrived. Each Seahawk carried 2 GAU 21.5 zero-caliber machine guns, capable of firing up to 1,100 rounds per minute, and an effective range of 1,850 meters.
The FNM-3M was designated by the U.S. Navy as the GAU-21 in 2004 and is currently using new requirements at the same time, UH-1Y with the GAU-21 weapon.
The ammunition used was a mixture of armor-piercing, incendiary, and tracer, powerful enough to penetrate the fragile hulls of fast attack craft. At 6:40, the Houthi ships opened fire first. PKM rounds whizzed past the helicopters, some as close as 15 meters, and that was their last mistake. The Seahawks dropped to 150 feet and began returning fire. They also dropped 12 MJU-68B flares and 24 RR-180 chaff packets to fool the heat-seeking missiles. Even without missiles fired, the pilots were not complacent. At 6:41, Lancer 71 locked on ship number 1. 3 rounds penetrated the engine, blowing up the fuel tank. The ship sank after 45 seconds. Immediately, Lancer 71 turned to ship number 2. A burst of bullets damaged the rudder. Then, 3 more seconds of continuous fire caused the ship to capsize at 6:42. Both helicopters immediately switched fire to ship number 3, opening fire simultaneously in a split second. The ship took dozens of penetrating bullets below the waterline, quickly lost stability, and sank at 6:44. Ship number 4 panicked and fled, but was still pursued fiercely. The ship's hull was riddled with bullet holes. The Seahawks did not continue the pursuit because their main mission was to protect the Maersk Hangzhou. In less than 7 minutes, they destroyed 3 Houthi attack boats and fired about 1,800 rounds of ammunition, a quick, accurate, and decisive response in the midst of a sea of fire. But for the Houthis, this was not the end. U.S. Central Command decided that destroying a few ships was not enough. Within 8 hours of the attack, the USS gravely shelled coastal radar stations that the Houthis used to track coalition ships. The USS Gravely fired a total of 92 5-inch Mark 45 shells, a 70-pound shell that traveled at 2,600 feet per second and had a range of about 9 miles. The ship sailed along the Yemeni coast and destroyed radar sites at Jabal al-Tayr, al-Mocha, and Ras Isa. These stations had been used by the Houthis to track ships over the past 2 weeks. Their destruction reduced the Houthis' surveillance capabilities by at least 60%, according to drone assessments after the attack. On January 1st, further airstrikes began. 4 FA-18E Super Hornet fighters from the Eisenhower took off carrying AGM-154C-JSOW missiles, targeting the Al-Duraihimi missile depot. Each JSOW carries a 500-pound Broach warhead that can penetrate 12 feet of reinforced concrete. At 6:43 p.m., 4 missiles hit their targets, causing multiple secondary explosions. Intelligence reports indicate that 18 Qusef drones, 4 Nor missiles, multiple guidance kits, 2 Iranian advisors, and 12 Houthi fighters were killed. This attack shows that the U.S. has changed its strategy, not only defending in place, but also being ready to retaliate in the long term to make it impossible for the Houthis to continue waging war. Goodbye and see you again.